Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome out to our gallery walk. I'm Seth Hopkins, the director of the museum. For any of you we haven't met, I'd love to talk with you during the reception if you're new here to the museum and convince you why you need a membership. That's a joke, son. Thank you for coming out. We have some wonderful art to talk about, both here during the gallery walk at 5 o'clock and again at 7 o'clock in the theater. So we do this twice, and somebody says, why do you do it twice? And I say, well, one, we like to be in the gallery and actually looking at the real paintings and talking about the real paintings, but we don't want to spend too much time on our feet, so we kind of try to do that for 30, 40 minutes, and then let you go have a glass of wine, get rested up. And then at 7 o'clock, we talk a little bit more about bigger picture things, literally and figuratively, about the artist's career and how they got to where they are today. And so that's kind of how we try to divide it up between these two experiences when we have these artists in town. And we are very pleased tonight to have with us Guy Coheleach from Stuart, Florida. And he's been doing this for a long time. We won't say how long. But he has done wildlife all over the world, particularly in his area here in the south, and so we don't get many southern pictures here in the museum, so it's cool to have a few of those. Of course, in our favorite part of the world, which is the west, and we have some pictures from there, and maybe Guy's favorite place, Africa.
Well, it has been.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're going to do is start with these couple of pictures right here, typical American scenes, and start with those, and then we'll kind of work our way on around the room. As we move around, if you need a stool or you feel you need to sit, of course we have the benches, and we have some docent stools over here. Also, if you would kind of stay out of the way of my camera lady, that would help. That way we get some good pictures of this and have this stored for posterity. So Guy, take it away. Talk about a couple of these pictures and why you were motivated to do these subjects and how you tackled doing them.
It's not quite as glamorous and romantic as most artists. I have a bird art show coming up at the Birds and Art at the Lee Yorkie Woodson Art Museum every year, and I need a bird painting, and I like wildlife art, and I like birds of prey, so this was deliberately painted for one of those years. When we had the show here, Seth mentioned, he said, well, it is a Western Wildlife Museum. He said, a Western Art Museum. Maybe don't come with all African stuff. So this painting behind Seth was deliberately painted for a Western animal, the puma. It's called Colorado Morning.
So, as he said, it doesn't have to be a romantic beginning, but it ends up as a romantic end. You want to hold
Oh, I hope so.
What were you trying to bring out in this one?
A painting of a bald eagle that wouldn't embarrass me. And it really, you know, when you've done this a lot, everybody here tonight is complimenting me. And when you sign them, you're saying, you're exposing an awful lot of how you think. And I don't want to embarrass myself, I don't want to embarrass my ability, and I certainly don't want to embarrass my name. And that's something I'm very proud of because of my parents. Oh my God. If anybody has questions, feel free to ask, but I'll let Seth ask the questions then.
Right. Everybody says, how do you do water, how do you do snow?
With great difficulty. You start with, I used to start painting Snow White and then putting in what I thought were the darker areas. And I found it's a lot easier starting with gray and putting in the lighter areas and then touching it up. But you can go either way. Most, you know, I paint very differently than most artists. And I paint very differently than myself. Every painting here has been started or germinated in a different way than the others.
When you say you paint differently than other artists, how do you think they paint versus you?
Well, I don't know. I just know when you go to an art group and everybody's talking about this, that, and the other thing, and they talk about the history of art, the psychology of art, and what I meant to do psychologically. I had this. I don't think like that. I have an idea that I want to do a mountain lion in the snow with the sun, and I try to do everything I can to make that a good mountain lion in good snow with a good backlight.
So the backlight here is really dramatic. How do you achieve that effect?
Again, with great difficulty. Really, it's true.
Right.
You have an idea and you put it down, and in a sketch where everything is spontaneous, it looks great. You know, a little 9x12 sketch where you don't spend any time. It's easy to erase or go over something. But when you commit yourself and you put it down into a larger size, it's not like erasing a pencil sketch. It's a major operation. There's an awful lot of beer time wasted making a correction, and that's sacrilegious, wasting time. I don't have much of it left.
So you're not talking about specific technique. A lot of this is just trial and error over the years with you kind of figuring it out based on some of your art training back at Cooper Union, which we talked about earlier today. Is it a combination of those two?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an expert on one thing, what not to do. And every one of these paintings is trial and error in the sense that I might have had a happy accident with a painting that do I have one of the American egret here? Well, at any rate, it's an American egret in flight. That's a painting where I sat down to do it, and I just very relaxed, and I put everything in. Now, in most paintings, there are places where you go over it once to make it better, and then you go over it twice to make it a little better, and then you go over it 4, 5, and 6 times to correct a big mistake you made. That painting is a happy accident. Everything went down right the first time, and it's very rare that happens.
I didn't answer because I don't know what an egret is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a white bird. You have them here. They're quite common here, actually. But it's a white heron.
Okay.
That's
take your word.
water bird, wading bird.
On a painting like this, I'm assuming there's a fair amount of photography reference that you've got to work from, or is this just completely something you made up?
I love to try to make them up, and when I'm finished, they look like I made them up. I do use an awful lot of photography reference, but there isn't any of these paintings that is a copied photograph, because if the photograph were that good, I'd be selling photographs. I'm not that good a photographer. I happen to love the mountains. I'm a frustrated amateur mountain climber that's too old and have a good excuse that, well, I couldn't do the Matterhorn because I'm too old now. Truth is, I probably never could have done it. But this is in the Canadian Rockies. What's that glacier, that lake?
Lake Jasper, Lake Louise?
No, it's not Louise, but, well, at any rate, it's one of those lakes, and it's one of the glaciers. And I just look up and, wow, you know, it's just overpowering. And, of course, put an eagle in it makes it look more overpowering. But I love painting like this because, you know, if you make a mistake, well, even I don't know it because the snow could have been there or the rock could have been there. Whereas if you're doing a portrait of somebody, right now I'm working on the Belmont Stakes, the end of the Triple Crown, the Justified one. And I've got Justified, the second, third horse, and the fourth horse coming in. And I'm not sure how I'm going to finish off the background yet, but I've got it blocked in. But New York racing, any racing fan, I would imagine, but New York racing fans, the guys that never got out of high school, they're down there and they're yelling at the jockeys and they're complaining about this. And they have expressions that I can't say in mixed company, but they really know their horses, they know their racing, they know their handicapping. And if I do a painting of the horse in a particular position, they'll say, When he passed the 21st furlough, or the 14th furlough, his legs were up in the air at that stage. I mean, these guys know this. I mean, they live it and breathe it. They would rather spend time at the racetrack than have their next meal. And their characters are wonderful. Well, I was there, what was it, Jimmy the Great, the handicapper that they bounced. And he asked me to place a bet. He says, if I place the bet, it's going to change the odds because everybody bet what he bet. So I went up and I said, you sure you want that one? And I said, okay. So I went up and I placed a bet on this horse to win, and I put a lot of my own money on that horse to win. That horse is still looking for the finish line. But at any rate, when you're doing something like that, you have to stick very closely with reality, what did happen. And there isn't when I'm finished this painting of the Belmont Stakes, there is no photograph. There's no way anybody could have photographed this because of the way I've changed things. But you do have to stick more to what is actually there, so you stick more closely to the photographs. But this stuff here, you just freewheel it.
Well, and I would think that's the case with this one, where you would have had to been 1,000 feet in the air, in thin air, to get this picture.
Yep.
So that makes it a painting that couldn't be photographed.
And it also makes it a painting that nobody here can say is wrong technically.
Since you're talking about horse racing, I know we're not to that piece yet, but do you want to just keep going and tell them about what that one is?
Oh, that's a painting, incidentally. No, I'll get to that later. But that was hanging in our dining room for years. It's a Polo painting, a Palm Beach Polo and white birch at the Palm Beach Polo Club back in the early 80s, I guess. And I shouldn't say it here. You know, I'm not that much of a horse fan back then. Everybody paints horses, and it's not wildlife. You know, it's not something out in the jungle or something. But when I went there, I started taking these movies, and I couldn't believe the action. I love painting motion. To me, it's a big mystery. How does my hand get from here to there? Is it a smooth thing, or is it a series of millions and millions of little? What is motion? What happens to the physical molecules? Do they move in one smooth thing, or do they jump? I don't know. But at any rate, I'm enthralled by motion, and that painting, there's a lot of things that I see wrong with it, mainly because I know the circumstances, but it does show motion. I like the design of it. I could have done the whole thing without a background, you know, just put it like they're dancing in the sky or something. But
Well, speaking of dancing in the sky, this is one of the more interesting pieces, I think.
This is called Golden Eyes. I used to trap snowy owls down at Jones Beach and Fire Island, and the eyes on these, if you take primrose yellow out of the tube, it is the brightest yellow you will see, and it's nowhere near as bright as these eyes on these birds. I mean, this doesn't do any justice. And I tried to describe it to Pam, whom I'll introduce later. Pam's my traveling companion of 61 years. And she just couldn't understand it. So I brought one of them home one time and took it out of the trunk of the car and showed it to her. And
She was impressed.
yeah. But there's such, you know, these creatures are such beautiful animals. People say, well, I love your work and it looks so neat. You do a halfway decent job on these animals. They make you look good. But this is a snowy owl, and he's just taken off, and I paint wildlife, I suppose, mostly, and it's got to look alive, and it's got to look wild. And to me, the easiest way to get that is with the eyes.
That's true. Our photography group, which I know there's several people here, that's what they always say. If you get the eye in focus, everything else is going to be fine.
It seems to be a good rule to fall back on when you get lost,
Absolutely.
at least with me.
And so one more Western subject here before we move on, Montana.
Glacier Park is another magical place. Where you mentioned before, I got enthralled with Africa because once I got there, I thought I'd never get back, so I kept trying to get back and found out I was there quite a bit. But is there a more beautiful place in the Canadian Rockies? The Rocky Mountains, Glacier Park, Grand Canyon? And we canceled an African trip this year because we want to do some work out west, because I'm getting to like Western stuff. How can you not after coming into this incredible place? Pam and I don't have much background in the war of Northern aggression, and we went through the paintings for the Civil War, and it's very moving. And today we were fortunate we had time to read all of the these things, and I didn't get really interested in that period of our history until I saw Ken Burns' thing on the Civil War, and now I can't get enough of it. What a tragic time. Let's get back to work.
Yeah, so Montana you were talking about.
Oh, I do ramble. This is probably someplace in Glacier Park, because I remember looking through Glacier Park backgrounds, and I don't do many bears because I don't know them that well. I'm terrified of them because they're more unpredictable than anything in Africa, although everything is unpredictable if it's wild. And I love magpies. I love all the corvids, the crows and jays and blue jays, but
all the troublemakers.
That's right. And magpies, they are rascals. They are troublemakers big time. So I put one in there to just tick off the bear.
So many of our folks have just gotten back from Montana. We had a 2-week member trip out there, and we saw a good chunk of this country, although Glacier wasn't open yet. I think they had 20-something feet of snow in the pass this year, and it was very, very late opening. I know some folks that went the first week of July, and it still wasn't open yet. The Going to the Sun Highway, yes. I think it was mid-July before they got it open, meaning last week. So it's a tough place to get to. It's not only open a few months of the year. You mentioned the Canadian Rockies. How many folks have been to the Canadian Rockies? It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, Teton is great, Glacier's great, but I don't think it compares just because of the magnitude, and you go on for 100 miles, and it looks like the Teton's around every corner. So if you get a chance, definitely go. All right, let's go all the way across the gallery, and let's do some seashores to balance out these mountains that we've been talking about.
I don't mind holding it,
Okay.
but am I not speaking loud enough?
Just consistently, if you just keep it up closer, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we've completely flipped here and looking at some completely different environments and animals and so on, and I'll let Guy take it from there.
I'm impressed with motion. Well, I'm impressed with water. Every home we've ever had, I've always put in ponds until we moved to Florida, where I don't know if you know what tropical water lilies are, the wonderful aroma they have. And I couldn't wait to put in ponds. And then my wife doesn't like snakes. And in Florida, if you have water, you've got more snakes than you thought ever existed. So we don't have ponds anymore, but I love water. I love the ocean. I love Victoria Falls to me. And Yellowstone. I remember the first time I went to Yellowstone, and is this okay? The first time I went to Yellowstone, and you drive along, and you see this little waterfall way far away. It looks like it may be 10 feet across. The next time I went to Yellowstone, I said, well, I'm going to get a little closer to the upper falls and the lower falls. The incredible volume of water that thunders over that precipice. Woo! It just, it's really awesome. I don't know, things like that move me very much. And anyways, you can see I like water.
So where you're living now, how far are you from the ocean?
About 10 minutes. And I grew up on the south shore of Long Island, and Jones Beach and Fire Island Beach, they were my home in the summer or any time, free time we had. The beach to me is up there is the most beautiful in the wintertime. There's nobody around, and it's a completely different life form, wildlife, for instance. And the light is different. I just love the sea and the water.
Well, and I thought it was interesting you mentioned Pam doesn't like snakes. That was your first true love, correct?
Well, I wouldn't compare them quite like that.
I didn't mean that.
But every kid grows up being interested in cats and dogs. I grew up being very interested in animals.
Not every kid.
Oh, I come here, okay, I'm a wildlife artist. I paint animals. And I said to Seth, you got a nice museum here. How about some Western animals? I said, what's your favorite animal? He says, I hate animals.
I don't hate them, but I don't like them either.
What was
They're
it?
great in paintings.
Oh, okay. Now, help me, I'm lost.
You're talking about snakes.
Oh, well, I just happen to like snakes. God knows why. My wife Pam will probably tell you 100 reasons why, but my daughter just told me I have to bring this closer.
She's doing my job for me. I'm liking her.
Oh, and then from snakes, I always thought I was going to be a scientist and so forth. And I don't want to get into a life history of things, but everybody likes animals, most everybody likes animals when they're kids. And you grow up and get distracted by cars and pretty girls or boys and making a living, so forth. Well, I never grew up in that sense that I still love animals. I go walking in the morning. I try to get back into my crypt before the sun comes up. And we have about a dozen dogs. I know the name of every dog that I see in the morning. I don't know any of the owners. And it's nobody minds you being that way if you like their dog. So I get away with it, I suppose. And it's not a case of being antisocial. I just have a terrible memory.
So how is painting bear in glacier or cat in the snow or in the Canadian Rockies different than painting at the seashore and these southern birds versus northern? Is there really any difference?
I don't see a difference. To me, a painting, I want to do a painting. I want to do a mountain painting. I want to do a seashore painting. I want to do a cat painting. I want to do a bird painting. I want to do a horse painting. Something gets me going. There's a germ somewhere that hits me and says, let's do this idea. And some of them work very quickly. That heron over there, the white one with the blue and white, that's the happy accident. And, it's no better or worse than most of this stuff, but it's one that everything went down right. Whereas, this one here, the mangroves, this one here, where you put something down, I know it looks just like that. And then you sit down, you suck a couple of beers, and you look at it and say, it doesn't look like that at all, you jerk. And you have to make these changes.
So when you're doing that, do you work on more than one at a time so you can go back and forth, or you're one at a time?
I'm kind of compulsive. If I start a second one before I finish the first one, I kind of say, well, maybe the first one shouldn't be finished. Maybe I should, because you're tired of it by that time. So when I'm getting to the point where I have my name signed on it, and incidentally, in my case, I find my paintings improve an awful lot after I think it's okay. When I think it's okay, I'll sign it, and then I'll put it aside, and when I'm watching a football game or watching the movies or just sitting down chatting, I'll look over where I have the painting. Oh, wow. And I have a little pen or pencil and a little white piece of paper, the left edge of that, where that branch comes out. It sticks out too far. It interferes with the bird and stuff like that. And that's where the experience comes in and says, it looked good, but with the combination where you have everything, you have to do something about it, whether it's cutting back or taking the bird out of there or something like that.
And how many times will that happen on a painting, typically?
With the exception of maybe one or two of them, I don't think there's a painting here that in the middle of it, I'd look at it and the painting would give me the peace sign, and I'd say, God, what am I doing here? I should be digging ditches. I shouldn't be doing that. And when you're struggling with them, you figure, well, I have no business doing this. I guess it's a case of insecurity or just fear that you're going to screw it up. I hate to waste time. The idea at my age that I spent 3 or 4 weeks on a painting and find out that I'm going to waste it, it just makes me intense to try to solve the problem. And the problems get solved best, in my case, by relaxing and putting it out of my mind, but putting it right there where all of a sudden some little voice pops in when I'm relaxed and says, you jerk, fix that leg, you know.
So I hear a lot of artists say they'll turn them back to the front, against the wall where they can't see them for a little while. Then they turn it back around in a week or two and it's fresh. Then they see the problems.
Yeah.
Do you do that as well?
Well, I don't feel I have the luxury of the time, but I do it in a number of other ways. When I'm working on a painting, I'm always looking at it through a mirror. If I'm working on that, I'll come out here and look at it from a distance in the mirror. And all of a sudden, in the beginning, especially when you're designing the painting, you see a good balance that way. You think it looks fine this way when you're reading left to right, but when you look at it right to left, oh, maybe I put that too far over. But I do, in this sense, what you're talking about, not looking at it, I put it aside so that I'm thinking something else. For instance, when I'm finishing up a painting, I'll go into the computer and look up whatever, like when I was doing the Belmont Stakes race, I couldn't make it up there this time. So I had a photographer go up and cover the fourth turn, which is where I like to, that to me is the best part of the race. And he shot a number of movies and so forth, and some of the best positions I got were from some of the earlier races. And where was I?
I don't know. You were talking about when you turn the paintings to the back and putting them where you might not see them.
When I was finishing up the painting of the spoonbills that I just finished, I wanted to get away from it, and you're tired of them. When you sign them, you think you're going downhill. But that's when the tiny little things that can really ruin a painting, that's the time when I think is the best time for me to find the mistakes. But I'll go into the computer, look up things, and just a completely different method of working. I'm not sitting at the easel, I'm not painting, I'm not killing myself with the smell. But getting a fresh eye before you send it out is very important. I did a painting of a lion years ago when we were doing a lot of prints. And this lion painting won a couple of minor awards. It was published three times as a print, as a magazine article, and a cover. And we're at not the University of Michigan, but one of our dealers in Ann Arbor. And this lovely Japanese couple comes in, and this little Japanese woman, she was so sweet, and she's giggling, and she keeps looking up at the lion painting. And finally I asked him, he said, oh, no, she won't tell me. I'm not, no way. no way would I let them criticize me, or they would criticize me. I said, please, it's very important. After about a half hour of this, I had never painted the whiskers on the lion, and nobody picked it up. No. And you know, you don't look at the whiskers on the lion normally, but when you look for them and they're not there, you look pretty stupid.
Obviously, it must not have mattered.
Well, yep, it did.
Let's shift around maybe to this wall and look at a couple more snow paintings.
Phil behind you wants to ask a question.
Okay. Talk about the buffalo.
In Europe, this animal is called the Weissant, and they're incredible animals. And the videos, with the videos you get today, these super high slow motion, the National Geographic films that they're completely redoing. I look at these things and wolves running back and forth, chasing each other, defending themselves. But I was out in Yellowstone one winter when anybody with any brains would be nowhere near the place. And I just saw, I never saw them this close. I just saw this gray thing in the back. And I just thought that'd make a great painting. I didn't do a good job on the buffalo, and it was just a feeling painting. How's that for getting out of it?
It's about the emotion and the atmosphere. And
Here's an emotional painting. I wanted to show how damn cold it was,
right.
or how cold it was.
So the gentleman's question here was, how do you know when you're done?
What's enough, because I ruined a couple of paintings. I keep trying to go detail on feathers or fur, and then I come back and say, oh, I shouldn't.
I don't know about you, but every time I ship it out, my son says, sign it and ship it out. And I had this horrible thing, you know, when you're leaving the door for 6 months and you're locking up, what did I forget? I put that thing in the mail, what did I not do? So I'm very insecure about that. But hopefully we haven't had too many problems with that.
I got you. How about the next one there? You're talking about this being feeling and more atmospheric. This one's got a little more detail in it, a little more study of the animal itself.
Well, it's basically a small painting for me where there's not that much. There's a lot more detail in all of these, I guess, than with the bison. But I enjoy painting snow, and I don't paint many coyotes, but I made sure I had one here.
That's Wile E. Coyote, isn't it?
Who?
Wile E. Coyote from the Roadrunner?
Oh, of course.
Right, that's his cousin, maybe. I've heard many painters talk about, I really don't paint detail, I paint the illusion of detail. Would that be accurate?
The good ones do that, and I'm still trying to do it.
But there's a real science to that, is there?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It comes much easier to you when you started painting from life. And unfortunately, because of the way I started, when in the print business in the 60s and 70s, everybody wanted every single little hair. And white background saved you, so you didn't have to put every hair on the ladybug's legs. But that's true. To give the illusion of hair, Bob Kuhn can do a meadow in about 5 minutes. And most of the guys today would probably take about 5 months because they want to put every single little stroke in there. And it couldn't look more like a meadow than when he did it, right?
Right. So tell them what you told me about what your favorite painting is.
Oh, that's easy. It's the next one. No mistakes. Oh. Oh.
And then talk about a more simple piece, like a study like this, and some of the ones that are around the room.
This is a watercolor. I love pure watercolor, wherever it's transparent, where there's no white opaque or opaque color over a darker color. If you see a light color there, it's a wash of the color you see, and if you see white, it's the background of the board. And it was another one of a horned owl, but somebody made me an offer I couldn't refuse. These are just small little thoughts. I love this root, the roots on this tree. And anytime you do a winter painting, a red fox just saves your butt. They really do. And here we've got the otters in the water just saying, "In your dreams, Mr. Fox." And this is just another little fox. He's listening for that mouse. And I don't know if you know foxes or coyotes, when they're searching in the winter and you think, how are they ever going to find a mouse? The fact is that they can hear through a foot of snow. How they can hear a mouse walking through a foot of snow, I will never figure out. But you see them watching, move up a little, and they pounce up and they just go bury down. All you see is a tail and the back feet, and they come up with the mouse in the mouth. Unbelievable. And coyotes do it also.
How many media are you working in today? Are you strictly in oil, or are you still doing other things?
When I travel, I work in watercolor. The last time I painted in Africa, I had to use gasoline for turpentine. I couldn't bring it over, and so I was using gasoline. And I'm painting a picture of camp, and all these Africans are coming out, ooh, ooh, smoking. Yeah, so I kind of thought it might be a lot smarter bringing watercolor. Little Coleman's watercolor thing in your pocket, and a pad in your back pocket.
Basically the way you started as a kid, I would guess, right? With the little watercolor set?
Yeah.
So 75 years later, you're still using the same material.
Yeah.
Got to be getting good at some point.
I hope so.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
I would like to answer one question that everybody asks. Pam, could you come here a minute? Come on. This is my traveling companion of 61 years. Now, I was being honored at a museum, the Lee Yorkie Woodson Art Museum, when they made me their master, their big shot, back in '83. And they had 93 artists there. They all wanted to know my 5 magic secrets of painting. And every one of them was sincere. Every one of them, just by being there, was a compliment. So I'm trying to explain to them that it's not that easy. I've had the phones turned off. I've been 6 months behind in the mortgage. I was trading paintings for liquor and trading the liquor for food. And people don't think that happens. And that time and again, especially right after that, so many of them came up and said, "My God, you gave me the willpower to keep going. That if you had to go through it, you know, what they're going through isn't quite that bad, maybe." So Pam pops up, says, "He's a fraud. I put in the numbers and the kids put in the colors." And when we go to a wedding and they have the anniversary dance, I'm going to get it for this. We usually win. And they say, "And what's the secret of your marriage?" "Long marriage." I said, "Sheer terror. She's got an Irish temper and she shoots better than I do."
Pam, rebuttal?
A rebuttal? Precious?
Precious.
That means, yes, precious, you're going to get it later. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
Your inspiration. Look at the fox painting that you said the roots of the tree inspired you. Did you find that on location?
I found something that looked very much like that with snow by a stream. And what I saw, I basically saw this, and it just made a great design for a horizontal. Had no idea what I was going to do. I just thought it would be a great design for a painting. And I always fall back on the red fox because in the winter they're fluffy, they really look neat, and they give you that little warm color to brighten it up. And then I put the otters in there, and I just figured, in your dreams, Mr. Fox, you ain't getting us.
Got time for maybe one more if somebody's got one. Yes.
Seth, more of a comment than a question for Guy. I was just going to tell you, I commend you for bringing a wildlife artist here for one of these events. Nothing against cowboy and Western art, but let me tell you, there's nothing like wildlife art. And when it comes to that, Guy is the best.
Amen to that.
That's why I love to get the bar.
Thank you later, Guy.
All right. That was quick enough. We got time for one more then. Still. Anybody? Going once? Going twice?
Is that pen and watercolor, or just watercolor with dark?
Just straight watercolor? Just,
This is pure transparent watercolor. There is no opaque in here,
And no ink?
no ink. This is pure watercolor with a brush, nothing else.
all right. And then I saw somebody back there jumping up and down. What's your favorite animal?
What's your favorite food? You know, I mean, do you like oranges better than apples? Do you like steak better than foie gras? I don't know how to answer that, because if I pick one, I say, how could you say this without saying the other? So I really don't have a favorite, but boy, I'd be lost without leopards and tigers.
Good answer. Good answer. Speaking of leopards and tigers, we have a book on lions, right, that we have downstairs, and the other one is more of a retrospective. Is that right?
Well, the Guy Coheleach's Animal Art is basically a retrospective and a lot of lies about how nice I am. And then the other one is The African Lion as Man-Eater, and the introduction is by Jack Nicklaus for you golfers. But anybody who wants the book signed, if you can have it, I don't know what the arrangements are for this evening afterwards, but anybody wants to buy one, I'll be delighted to sign it. 100% of the profit goes to the museum.
Thank you for that. That is correct. All the books were donated to the museum, so whatever we get out of them goes straight to the bottom line. And we thank Guy and Pam for doing that very much and supporting the museum in that way, in addition to letting us borrow all this wonderful art from his collection. So the bar is open. How about a big round of applause for Guy?
The bar's open?
The bar is open.